I grew up playing the basketball with the boys, so like it's always been physical and feisty, and like that's what it is, and you got to find a way
A
to hold
seismic
your own.
shockwave has rattled the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham, Caitlin Clark's fearless confidant, has detonated a bombshell that no one saw coming, exposing the jaw-dropping truth behind Clark's mysterious absence from the court, her revelations. Tearing apart the carefully woven curtain of silence and unraveling a web of secrets that sparked frenzy among fans and left the league scrambling to contain the damage. Because the big question every fan now asks is simple yet devastating. What's really keeping the brightest prodigy of the game away from the spotlight? And how does Sophie's exposé threaten to change everything the WNBA thought it could control? The pulse-pounding drama begins with Sophie herself. A player who was never content to sit quietly on the sidelines, bold, fiery, unapologetically herself. A player who has always spoken with the same intensity that she pours into every possession on the court, and in a league where most voices are measured, polished, and managed. Sophie has turned into something rare, the one athlete willing to risk it all just to say what everyone else only whispers behind closed doors. And by 2024, those risks had already cost her dearly, more than $3,000 in fines piled up over the smallest moments, a $500 hit for an offhand TikTok comment about officiating, a $1,500 blow for daring to highlight inconsistencies in refereeing on a podcast, and a penalty so hushed that no public record was given. Just silence and a fine when she called out favoritism that fans complain about every single week, but players rarely admit. For most, that would have been the breaking point, because in a league where salaries range from $64,000 to $242,000 a year, losing even $1,500 isn't pocket change, it's a dent in your livelihood, the kind of punishment that makes most think twice before opening their mouths again. Imagine losing 2% of your paycheck just for speaking the truth out loud. Anyone else might have backed down, but not Sophie. Not the fiery sharpshooter from Missouri who had made a career out of refusing to back down. Every fine only fueled her fire. Every attempt to silence her only amplified her voice. And that is why fans lean in closer every time she speaks, because she isn't venting for attention. She is exposing cracks in the foundation of the league itself, in an era where most athletes are more focused on their image than their integrity. Sophie Cunningham's voice became the one place where unfiltered truth slipped through, and then came the moment that changed everything. Her comments about Caitlin Clark, the prodigy of women's basketball, the face of the league's future, the young woman who had transformed Iowa into a sold-out arena spectacle and was drafted into the WNBA with the kind of fanfare reserved only for generational talent. When Sophie spoke about Caitlin's struggles and the way the league was handling her situation, fans knew it wasn't idle gossip, because Sophie had already proven she was willing to pay the price for honesty. Her words carried weight beyond her own story, and instantly the speculation became impossible to ignore. Some called her reckless, others called her brave, but one thing was undeniable. Sophie had become the unofficial whistleblower of the WNBA. Her words cut through polished narratives, forcing uncomfortable questions into the open. Questions the league didn't want asked. Questions about officiating, favoritism, transparency, and most of all about Caitlin Clark. Fans now wondered, if Sophie is telling the truth about Clark, then what is really happening behind the curtain? What are we not being told? Sophie had crossed the line from athlete to truth-teller, and she didn't stop there. She described a league where selective officiating shields some stars while others are left to endure relentless physical punishment, where favoritism isn't just speculation, but a lived reality for players who feel the tilt night after night. She dared to say what others only hint at, and she paid the price every time. But her refusal to shut up became its own kind of currency, one that fans valued more than any marketing campaign, because in her raw honesty, they saw something missing: accountability. And then the focus shifted back to Caitlin Clark, the prodigy whose absence had been explained away by vague statements and murky reports. Sophie insisted that it wasn't just about the injury, it was about the brutal mountain the WNBA expects every player to climb. The transition from college dominance to professional survival is not seamless, she warned. Even a superstar with historic hype must prove she can survive the speed, the strength, the physical depth of a league that has become a battlefield. And yet beyond the physical test lies a political one. Selective officiating, unspoken favoritism, inconsistent narratives fed to fans and media, all of which cloud the truth about Caitlyn's status. Injury updates collapse into silence, timelines vanish into fog, social media turns rumor into fact because official channels provide nothing. And the league seems to prefer it that way. Sophie described it perfectly, a patchwork of explanations, edited statements, and blank spaces where truth should be. And that raised the biggest question: who benefits from the silence? Is it the league's image? Is it the protected stars who get every whistle? Or is it the media cycle hungry for manufactured drama? What emerged was simple. Caitlin Clark was caught in a storm bigger than an injury. She was trying to heal her body, prove her readiness, and navigate a court where rules didn't feel consistent. And in that chaos, speculation exploded. Fans asked if favoritism shaped minutes and momentum, if fines were being used to police narrative instead of correcting imbalance, if even Indiana's locker room was divided by the silence. Sophie's perspective created a pressure no PR statement could erase, because this wasn't just sports gossip anymore. It was a test of trust, a test of fairness, and fans demanded clarity. They wanted transparency, medical timelines, consistent officiating, and a league that didn't hide behind vague phrases. Until then, every day Clark stayed. Out was another story with missing pages, another rumor gaining traction. Sophie's voice became the rare glimpse behind the curtain, a voice that left fans demanding answers instead of comfort. And that's why the stakes have never been higher. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. In recovery, she's the symbol of a league struggling with its own credibility. Sophie's words suggested that Caitlin could probably play right now in another setting. But the WNBA isn't another setting, it's the toughest proving ground the sport has ever seen. Speed, strength, and mental endurance combine to consume anyone who dares step into it. The hits heavier, the collisions constant, the mental toll immense. Sophie hinted at what insiders whisper, that Caitlin's hesitation isn't weakness, but realism. The WNBA demands perfection, nothing less, and that is the real twist. Because if even Caitlin Clark, the unstoppable college legend, must pause before stepping back on the floor, what does that say about the league itself? Fans may cheer the rise of the game, but behind the curtain there is growing talk about how much the body and mind can endure. Sophie isn't questioning Caitlin's toughness. She is exposing the impossible standard, and that's where this story leaves us for now, at a cliffhanger. Because if Sophie Cunningham is right, Caitlin Clark's absence is no longer just about injury. It is about survival in a league that no longer forgives anything less than perfection. And the question that lingers is brutal. What is really keeping Caitlin Clark off the court, and can the WNBA survive the truth Sophie is daring to tell? If Sophie Cunningham is right, then Caitlin Clark's absence is no longer a simple injury, but a mirror reflecting the impossible standards of the WNBA. Because at Iowa, Caitlin looked untouchable. Her vision, her shooting range, her ability to single-handedly carry the Hawkeyes turned arenas into shrines and television, into a showcase of women's basketball history. Yet as Sophie made clear, college dominance doesn't automatically guarantee survival at the professional level. In the WNBA, defenders aren't just tough, they are the best in the world. Referees let the game flow with a level of physicality that looks closer to rugby than basketball, and in this environment, an injury isn't just a pause, it can be career-altering. Sophie wasn't saying Caitlin was weak, she was saying the league has become brutal. A place where even generational stars must second-guess their return. Sophie highlighted how inconsistency in officiating creates a two-tier system. Some stars wrapped in bubble wrap, every touch earning a whistle, while others like Caitlin take hit after hit with no protection. She even compared how Paige Buchers seemed shielded by referees while Caitlyn was left exposed to collisions. The moment she dared to say this on her podcast, the league fined her again. A hefty sum meant less as punishment for being wrong and more as punishment for being too honest. Fans noticed the pattern. Sophie spoke the truth, and the league told her to shut up, and every time she refused, paying thousands just to keep honesty alive. So what does this mean for Caitlyn? If the WNBA demands perfection while applying rules unevenly, then the system itself might be setting up its brightest stars to burn out. Sophie described a silence heavier than any injury report. Because in leagues like the NBA or NFL, when stars like LeBron or Mahomes are sidelined, the updates flow instantly. Transparency is non-negotiable. Yet here, Caitlyn Clark's status is buried under vague statements like day-to-day, no updates at this time, leaving fans with nothing but scraps. And in that blackout, rumors bloom. Some whisper the league is hiding how serious her injuries are. Others fear that the lack of officiating protection is fueling recurring setbacks, turning temporary recovery into a fragile career pattern. Even Sophie admitted in shock on her own podcast that she literally didn't know. Not even Caitlyn's. Teammates knew the truth. Think about that. The most celebrated rookie in decades and her own locker room is left in the dark. What does that say about transparency? Fans scroll social media and the same questions repeat endlessly. Why no timeline? Why no clarity? Why so much silence? Every missing detail only deepens the mystery, and every vague answer feels like deflection. Sophie's confession of ignorance magnified the crisis, because if players themselves don't know, then who is controlling the narrative? And why? Is the blackout about protecting Caitlyn's privacy, preventing panic, or is it another attempt by the league to keep its fragile image under control? Whatever the reason, the silence has backfired. The louder the blackout, the louder. The speculation and Sophie's blunt honesty only validated those suspicions. Fans began to wonder if Caitlyn Clark might one day follow the path so many WNBA stars have taken. Overseas to Europe, where the salaries are higher, the schedules less punishing, the recovery clearer, Sophie herself suggested Caitlyn might thrive elsewhere, not because she lacks ability, but because the WNBA has become a proving ground so unforgiving. It threatens to consume even its brightest stars. This isn't speculation about toughness. This is about sustainability. Can a league demand perfection every night and still protect its players, or will it break them? Sophie's own story proves the stakes when she collided with Connecticut's Bria Hartley on August 17th, suffering an MCL injury. She insisted there was no malice. They were friends. Yet the incident showed how brutal every game has become. She turned that moment into reflection, pointing out that the WNBA is now a place where raw talent isn't enough. You need armor, resilience, mental endurance, and luck just to get through the grind. Her podcast, Show Me Something, has become the rare place where these truths are spoken. Digital breadcrumbs and whispers from insiders show more players privately agree with her, but few dare risk the fines. That's why her voice is so dangerous. She not only questions favoritism on the court, but the league's silence off it. Sophie openly speculated that Caitlyn's absence is being stretched by the league's desire to control the narrative, not simply by the injury itself, and this opened an even bigger conversation. The WNBA's growth is undeniable. Record TV ratings, sold-out arenas, mainstream recognition, all thanks to stars like Caitlyn Clark, but the rise has created impossible standards. Fans cheer the progress, but players whisper about the hidden cost. Veterans admit they need armor to survive constant travel, endless scrutiny, brutal schedules, all while many are forced to play overseas in the off-season just to make ends meet. And those overseas leagues often treat them better, higher pay, fewer games, clearer recovery timelines. When Sophie says Caitlyn might thrive elsewhere, she isn't questioning Caitlyn's heart. She is questioning whether the WNBA itself is sustainable. History has examples. Maya Moore walked away in 2019 not because of weakness, but because she chose a different path, and her legacy only grew stronger. So the question becomes whether Caitlin Clark, the player hailed as the savior of women's basketball, might one day face a similar choice. Not out of desire, but out of necessity. Sophie Cunningham forces us to confront that possibility. Her willingness to pay thousands in fines and risk reputation just to say the truth out loud is proof of how broken the silence has become. She reminds us that behind every highlight reel lies the human cost, the bodies breaking, the mental toll, the sacrifices hidden. And the truth is this: Caitlin Clark's journey back to the court isn't just about recovery, it's about whether the league that built her fame can protect her from being broken by the very system it created. Fans may remember the stats, the points, the records, but they will also remember Sophie Cunningham, the expensive truth-teller who refused silence, who ripped open the narrative and demanded transparency, who turned her own fines into a megaphone. Her courage may define not just Caitlin's path, but the future of a league struggling to balance its growth with the survival of its players. The question that lingers is stark. Can the WNBA evolve fast enough to protect its stars, or is it building a system only the strongest can endure? And if Sophie is right, then Caitlin Clark's absence is not a personal weakness, but a symptom of a league reaching its breaking point. So fans now ask, what is really keeping Caitlin Clark off the court? An injury, or a truth too dangerous for the league to admit, and until the silence ends, every day of her absence will echo louder, the whispers will grow stronger, and the trust between fans and the league will hang by a thread. Sophie's voice has shaken the WNBA to its core, and her courage leaves us with one final question. Can the league afford to silence the truth when the world is demanding answers louder than ever?